No, you aren't mistaken. It is Saturday, and yes, you're getting another ship updates. In fact, you're getting a whole bunch more ship updates, one to coincide with every sale day of the anniversary sale. I'm going to be going along with the manufacturers of the day and talking about the ships that they sell. Hopefully doing a quick video and a quick blurb on each of the ships, or the family of ships, as it were. Quick being a relative term, as we saw yesterday. So without further ado, let's get started. Now, Roberts Space Industries holds a certain distinction within ship offerings, and that is it has one of the most widely owned ships. This one right here, the Aurora. This ship probably holds the distinction of being the most owned vessel across all Star Citizen players because it is generally the ship that comes with the basic game package. And it will probably in the future hold the distinction of being the most quickly sold ship to get spending money to put into your real ships rather than this piece of crap. Moving on. Next up, we have another distinguished ship from RSI, and that is the Constellation. Now, in the early days of Star Citizen, there was a whole bunch of people who scooped this ship up. And then a whole bunch of people sold it for more specialist ships or flashier things. This is very much a relic of the early days of Star Citizen. It is not a bad ship by any stretch of the imagination. It is a solid ship. It is an all-arounder. It is like a Drake Cutlass in that way, except upsized. It's not incompetent in any particular area, nor does it truly excel. I mean, even in its specialist versions, like the Phoenix, it's not exceptional in any way. But it is not a terrible ship because of that. It is a solid purchase, though to me personally, I've always looked at it and found it to be somewhat lacking, both visually and in terms of overall logical design. It just feels like a half-finished idea, and that something that was kind of come up with at a time when Star Citizen was undefined and is now feeling like a relic from a bygone era, something that's never really had a chance to show itself off, and now that day has kind of come and gone. So I will not say that I think that owning this ship is a bad idea, but nor will I congratulate anyone on buying one and say like, oh well, that was a solid purchase. It's not a bad idea to own one, but it is a thoroughly unremarkable vessel. All right, the RSI Apollo. Now, this is obviously, I mean, especially since we just looked at the Constellation, this is basically like a baby Connie, right? But this is a medical ship, a search and rescue ship. I think there's two versions, the Triage and another one which is not immediately coming to mind. But that's basically what they are. They're kind of a cross between an ambulance, search and rescue, and a bit of a mobile hospital. This is going to be a ship that I think is going to be entirely CIG driven. And what I mean by that, well, not entirely, but largely. What I mean by that is that, you know, how many times are you or your friends going to get shot up and need medical care? Possibly quite often, but are you always going to be trucking around in a ship like this, you know, just in case it happens? Possibly. But chances are the lion's share of what you're going to do on the ship is going to be driven by CIG, by missions. You know, go out here. You know, we've done a lot of missions where it's like, oh, the Constellation blew up in space, steal me the black box or something like that. Or, you know, look for these passengers who have died. Now maybe you might be going out there and rescuing some of those passengers with this ship and getting paid a certain amount of money per person that you rescue. And if you do it really quickly, you get them all, you get a bonus, blah, 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 blah. I think that it's going to be largely driven by missions like that. Like, oh no, SETI Alpha 6 exploded. Go rescue the settlers on SETI Alpha 5. You know, that sort of thing. I'm not someone who particularly leans towards the medic role in games. I certainly can play them and have played them in the past, but it's not something that is my primary focus. So I think for people who are going to purchase this ship, I would say that occasionally there are going to be situations where someone's going to crash their ship or something bad's going to happen. They're going to be like, oh my god, can somebody help us? And then you show up with the ship and yay, you saved the day. But I think by and large, if you're planning to purchase this ship and this is kind of like the centerpiece, this is your goal, this is what you're going for, a lot of your content is going to be very PvE driven, and there's probably not going to be as much that it's, you know, kind of working around other players, unless you play with people who are, you know, not really all that careful in the Star Citizen universe. I think this is largely going to be a mission-based ship. That is not a bad thing, but if you're looking to, like, if you're purchasing this vessel and you're like, every day I'm going to save people, like real people, not NPCs, maybe not. I think it's probably going to be more mission driven than anything else. Next up, the RSI Polaris. Probably quite a few people waiting for this one. Have my feelings changed on the Polaris at all? Not really. I like the Polaris. I really do like the Polaris. I think that it is probably the strongest ship that RSI offers. What I really like about it is the fact that apparently it is supposed to have, and I'm using air quotes here, blazing speed. Now, what exactly that means for a capital ship might be quite different from what that means for a fighter, but it is supposed to be fast. It is an attack ship. It is, you know, CIG in the original videos when they were talking about this kind of used the example of a submarine, like a submarine that gets in fast, fires its torpedoes, and gets away, which is not really how a submarine works. That's more like a PT boat, if anything, and I kind of see this as a big PT boat. It's got those capital torpedoes, the biggest torpedoes that you can have in the game. It's got 4 launchers, 4 in the tubes, and 24 in the racks. 28 in total. Now, that is one of the things that I like about the ship, but both dislike about the ship as well. I would have liked options in terms of that weaponry, that if you could remove the entire torpedo system and replace it with a large cannon system, a fixed cannon system, so you would still have to kind of aim the ship in on your target and you could make an attack run with it. I would like that. Yes, it would be a little Defiant-esque, but I very much would like the option to switch back and forth. The only real problem I have with the torpedo system is the fact that, once again, it's expendable ammunition, which means there's a limit on it, and it also means that every time you pull the trigger, you can hear the cash register ringing in the background. And that is something that I'm not entirely fond of. I don't think that it would have been too much of an ask to create a variety in those anti-capital class weapons. But apart from that, I think that having a fast maneuverable ship like this, presumably that's going to have a decent amount of range, that has enough firepower in its guns to be fairly strong in the sub-capital category of ships, if not dominant, but yet still have that reach to where it doesn't outright outclass any other capital ship, but it still has that possibility through its torpedo system to do damage to those ships, possibly fatal damage. You know, there's a lot of variables here that we just haven't seen materialize. I like that a lot about this ship. I would have preferred a little bit more variety in terms of the weapon system, and truth be told, I'm not entirely of a fan of where the bridge is placed on this ship, but for now, I'm willing to give it the benefit of the doubt. I think that this is going to be an extremely strong ship in the future, but how long we're going to have to wait for it, well, that could be quite some time. Now, earlier this year in March, Disco Lando on Reverse the Verse dropped a hint that possibly the Polaris was going into production around last April. Now, apart from that, we have never heard anything about this since. And I personally believe that the 890 jump took that slot, because the 890 jump, as a lot of you know, was originally slated to begin work in March of 2017. And then, you know, it was supposed to be in production, and made a whole bunch of videos, and we were talking about it, and we never heard anything about it, and then we never heard anything about it, and then all of a sudden we started to see some stuff just in the last few months where it's like, now we're starting on the 890 jump. About 4 or 5 months after its original expected completion date was supposed to be. And I think that that's what happened here, is they were already working on the 600i. They were going into work on the Phoenix. I guess they wanted all the luxury ships kind of sewn up, and they pushed the 890 jump ahead of the Polaris. Now, that's not an unreasonable thing. Of course, the 890 jump has been around longer and is still a long-awaited ship, so I'm not going to really go, oh, why do we need the 890 jump? In that instance, I think the 890 jump would have been justified to go ahead of the Polaris, though 600, So it might be a while before we see this thing materialize. It does a lot of things. You know, it can also carry a fighter. It can refuel a fighter. There's a lot of potential here. As just not only a combat vessel, but as a generalist ship, there's a lot of potential to have a lot of fun adventures on something like this, wide-ranging, to transition out of, say, the Star Wars fighting, shoot-'em-up thing, and possibly move into a more Star Trekian-like existence where you're voyaging all over the place and exploring and seeing new things. There's a lot of interesting possibilities with this ship that I really, really like. I wish it were in production. Unfortunately, it is not. I'm a big fan of this ship, and it is something that I'm keeping a weather eye on, for no particular reason. The RSI Orion. Now, unlike a lot of the ships that we've talked about, the RSI Orion is actually a ship whose career, at least to a rudimentary degree, is in the game right now. It's very basic tier 0 implementation. Mining is here now through the Prospector. It works, and apparently, if the boasts in local chat are to be believed, it is quite lucrative. I cannot see how things are panning out in mining, how this would be a bad purchase. Now, it has certainly upsized since its original concept. It is apparently in production now. This is something that is going to be delivered in hopefully the not too distant future. I don't see how this is a bad ship. If you're industrially inclined, you know, if you are specifically looking for a mining ship, I don't see how this is a bad idea. Yes, the price has gone up and it is now 450, but also the size of this thing has gone up considerably beyond the original concept. I really, really like this ship, and I'm not saying that because, you know, I'm a pirate, blah, blah, blah. I'm saying it just because, all in all, front to back, this is a 100% solid design. There's nothing about this that ultimately jumps out and says, ooh, that was a bad choice. Ooh, that was a mistake. The idea, the career, the design, just the appearance of it, even if that even really matters to you, it's just 100% solid front to back. It is not a bad purchase. If you are mining or industrially inclined, it's, I think, because we now have mining in the game, and now we can kind of touch on and experiment with these things, I can't see how this is a bad ship. It does not compute that that's a possibility. It's just 100%, in my opinion, a fantastic ship. And finally, the Ursa Rover. Now, the Ursa Rover is kind of a tough ship to explain, because the gameplay that revolves around this ground rover isn't really fully implemented in the game. Yeah, we can go down to a location on a planet, oh, go do this mission here, oh, go do that mission there, but really FPS combat missions haven't really materialized. I mean, there is kind of like one, but the need for a vehicle like this really hasn't manifested itself in the universe yet. There are interesting possibilities with this. I mean, one of the very first times that we saw this being used in gameplay was, of course, where someone had to land a Connie. It was the Pathfinder demo, land a Connie, get out, drive all the way over to this base, sneak in, and, you know, blah, blah, blah. It gets destroyed halfway, and then they have to hop onto a Dragonfly. And a lot of what drove that, the need to drive there, you know, the area denial, the inability to fly into certain areas, it's things that we've heard about before, but it's things that haven't manifested themselves in the game yet. So a vehicle like this, or any ground vehicle, it's a really tough sell to people because they don't really see the need for it in their day in, day out. Oh, I have a mission here, I just fly and land right there, pick up the thing and go. And in the future, that may not always be possible, and you might have to traverse quite a distance in a ground vehicle. And that's kind of where the tanks, the Dragonflies, you know, the Jeep, that's where all of this kind of comes into play, and certainly the Ursa Rover as well. Now, unlike the tank, which realistically probably can't carry much in the way of cargo, and unlike the Jeep, which can carry a very minimal amount of cargo, and the Dragonfly, which its cargo situation we'll get into on Drake Day. This certainly has a little bit of cargo space in it, though most of it would be eaten up if you basically fill it up with troops, but there is still some room in there. So it's still fairly good in that area. Overall, I think that this is a vehicle that it's not a horrible purchase, though I don't think it's something that you wouldn't be, you know, you wouldn't feel out of place or like you were falling behind if you didn't say, you know what, this is one of those things I'm just going to buy in game. I'm not worried about it now. So it's nothing that I think that is absolutely crucial immediately. I think it's something that's going to come into play later, but overall, I don't think that it's something that will be entirely out of place in the future. Just right now, not all that important. Well, folks, that's it for today. I hope you guys enjoyed it, and I'll see you in the next one.
Thank you for watching. So if you want to keep up with the latest and greatest in Star Citizen and Squadron 42's development, please follow us on our social media channels. See you soon.